Welcome to Movie Recall. In today's video, we will be going through the 2012 superhero movie, The Amazing Spider-Man. It's time to recall. Let's get started. Turn on subtitles and spoilers ahead. The movie starts and we see in Queens, New York City, scientist Richard Parker is playing hide and seek with his young son, Peter Parker. Peter ends up in a room where his father works and finds someone tampering with his father's work. He right away goes on to tell his father what he just saw out there, and Richard is nothing less than shocked and concerned to learn this. He makes his way to his room, and after quickly gathering some top secretly hidden documents, Richard and his wife Mary Parker leave Peter with his auntie Maybelle May Parker and Uncle Benjamin Ben Parker, then mysteriously depart without telling Peter where they are going. Years later, the teenage Peter Parker has become an alienated, shy, and distressed social outcast with still little knowledge about his parents. He, however, happens to be a good photographer and has a crush on one of his classmates named Gwen Stacy. We then go on to learn that he attends as a student at Midtown Secondary College of Science and Technology. We see that he is frequently getting bullied by the obnoxious, stressful, and mean sports player and school bully Eugene Thompson, who is also known as the Flash. That day, when he goes on to the sports ground, he finds Flash bullying an innocent boy who is unable to defend himself against the much bigger and much more powerful Flash. As Flash sees Peter out there, he asks him to take a photo of him bullying the little boy. Peter instead goes on to refuse and tells him that he is nothing but an idiot. It enrages the bully, and he goes on to beat the shit out of Peter. Gwen shows up and right away breaks up the fight. She seems impressed by Peter's bravery, and when they are back in class, they go on to introduce each other. When Peter goes home later that day, his aunt notices the bruise on his face and asks him about it, but he tells her that it was nothing but an accident. His uncle shows up. He tells him to come to the basement where he shows him an old fridge. It's been broken for quite a while, and his uncle goes on to ask him if he can fix it. His uncle also notices the bruise on his face and asks him who beat him up. Peter pretends to ignore the question, and his uncle makes his way out of the basement. Later that day, Peter looks around the basement and comes across a suitcase. This is the same suitcase his father took from their home when he was just a little boy. He takes the suitcase to his room and searches for it. He goes on to find a secret portion where he finds some documents. We see that these documents are the same ones we saw at the beginning of the movie. He sees that it is an algorithm that his father did not want anyone to find. Peter himself is a science and tech student, so he happens to take interest in such things, and the documents pique his interest. He goes on to search on the internet to find more data regarding the documents and tries to make sense of what is in there. As he looks up more information on the internet, he goes on to learn that his father used to work with another man named Curt Connors. It turns out that they have been working on different experiments, and their aim was to enhance the abilities of humans. They wanted humans to be more powerful and invincible against all kinds of diseases. We learned that his father and Curt used to work at a pharmaceutical science company named Oscorp. Peter decides to go there and fake his way into the Oscorp building by pretending to be an intern. When he gets there, he also sees Gwen and learns that she is working as Kurt's assistant. When he is walking inside the building, he bumps into a man named Rajith Ratha. Peter notices that this man has a document on which the decay rate algorithm is written. It is the same as the one he saw in his dad's documents. He quickly understands that these documents are definitely related to the ones his father had. Peter follows Ratha and sneaks into a mysteriously dark laboratory where an extremely strong biocable is being created from experimental genetically altered modified spiders. He mistakenly touches one of the webs, and this is when all the other spiders go out of control and the situation becomes chaotic as all the spiders attack Peter. He, however, manages to get out of there. Ratha, on the other hand, goes directly to Curt and tells him that he needs the formula this company has been working on for years, and if he is not given the formula soon enough, he will not take much time to shut down the company. Curt gets worried upon this warning and tells him that they are trying their best. Peter, in the meantime, gets a chance to have a chat with his crush Gwen Stacy. When he leaves, one of the spiders escapes from its container and hungrily bites Peter on the neck. On the subway ride home, Peter scuffles with a gang of thugs and discovers that he suddenly has increased agility and strength, probably a side effect of the spider's bite. Upon returning home, he finds the spider hiding in his jacket and stores it away. When he gets home, his aunt sees him and tells him that he seems really tired. He, however, does not say anything and goes directly to his room. When Peter wakes up the next morning, he feels many changes in his body. Whenever he grabs something, he breaks it, and he also has the ability to draw different objects towards his body. He finds himself unable to control his powers. Upon noticing all these things, he enhances his research on the algorithm. He goes on to learn that on all these things, a whole book has been written, and this book was written by none other than Kurt Connor. He then makes his way to the man's house, and he is not too thrilled about Peter showing up at his house. This is when Peter goes on to tell him that he is Richard Parker's son. Hearing this, he right away invites him in. As they get to talk, the man tells the boy that he used to work with his father and they were working on a very important project that would have helped humanity in so many ways, but the day when Richard was to give him part of his research, that is the day he died in a plane crash, and this is the day when Connors stopped working on the project. Peter then goes on to give him the other part of the algorithm that he figured out from the documents of his father. Dr. Connors explains that he and Richard were researching cross-species genetics in order to find a way to regrow lost limbs. Dr. Connors being motivated by the loss of his own right arm, which he'd lost during a war. Connors then asks Peter to meet him at his office as well. We also see that Connors is frustrated because his superior, Rajit Ratha, is pressuring him to devise a cure for Oscorp's CEO founder, Professor Norman Virgil Osborn, who is terminally ill. The next day, when he goes to school, Peter's attitude is totally different because he is too powerful and agile now. When they are playing basketball, he goes on to teach Flash a lesson by torturing and insulting him in front of everybody when Flash finds it hard to take the ball from him. Peter is, however, unable to control his powers and gets in trouble after accidentally breaking a basketball hoop during the game with Flash. Uncle Ben is forced to switch a work shift to meet with Principal Philip Coulson about the situation. When Uncle Ben is giving him a lecture, he spots Gwen there and he tells her that she is the same girl whose photo is on Peter's PC, and Peter is embarrassed at this. When his uncle leaves, he goes to talk to Gwen, who now knows that Peter likes her. She asks him what her picture is doing in his PC, and he tells her that he took a group picture and she must be in there too. Uncle must have seen her in that group picture. Their conversation ends up with them deciding to go on a date. Afterward, Uncle Ben asks Peter to pick up Aunt May, but Peter instead practices his new spider-like superpowers and meets with Dr. Connors at Oscorp, who shows him how the limb regeneration formula works on a laboratory mouse. In the meantime, Uncle Ben keeps calling Peter as he has to remind him that he is to pick up his aunt, but Peter is too busy in the lab. When Peter returns home, Uncle Ben scolds him for having forgotten to pick up Aunt May, reminding him that Richard believed that people should always make their responsibilities a priority. His aunt tries her best to keep it cool and calm and says that Peter is only human and humans forget things, so they should just let it go, but his uncle is too pissed off at him and is not ready to let him off the hook that easy. After getting a lot of shit from his uncle, a distraught Peter storms off. He goes to a store to buy milk, but falls 2 cents short and is refused service by the store clerk. Suddenly, a criminal named Dennis Carradine, who has a star tattoo on his wrist, robs the store, and Peter doesn't do anything to stop him. Uncle Ben, who was searching for Peter, sees the thief running away and wrestles with him over a gun. The thief shoots Uncle Ben right in front of Peter and runs off. Peter blames himself for the tragic incident. Shortly after the attack, Peter acquires a police sketch of Dennis the murderer and uses his abilities to hunt criminals matching the killer's description. After attacking a man who fits the description, he is chased by a gang and falls inside an abandoned gym, and a lurched wrestling poster inspires him to create a mask. Peter then goes on to prepare a whole costume for him and also tries to use and learn to control his skills and power. One night when he is out, he sees a thug stealing a car and goes on to beat the shit out of him. He mistakes him for the man who killed his uncle, but soon notices that he does not have a star tattoo on his hand in the meantime. The police arrive there, and the man gets out of there. Later on, he adds a skin-tight morph onesie superhero spandex suit for mobility, and suddenly becomes a folk hero who the public refers to as Spider-Man. The police, led by Gwen's father, Captain George Stacy, soon start a manhunt for the masked vigilante. On the other hand, Ratha fires Dr. Connors for refusing to immediately start human trials of the limb regeneration formula. He takes a sample of the drug and plans to test it at a Veterans Administration hospital under the guise of flu shots. Growing desperate, Dr. Connors injects himself with the formula and passes out. Upon awakening, he finds his lost arm has fully regenerated. However, he then mutates into a large reptilian lizard-like monster and chases Dr. Ratha at the Williamsburg Bridge, throwing cars over the side as he rampages. Spider-Man saves each fallen car with the biocable homemade web, which he deploys from wrist-mounted web shooters of his own invention that he made out of watches. With a great deal of difficulty, he also manages to save the life of a young boy trapped in a car that has fallen from the bridge and that Spider-Man is holding suspended in midair through the biocable webbing. Spider-Man then confronts the lizard in the sewers, barely escaping alive. The effect of the injection now starts to fade a little, and this is when the lizard also starts to lose its powers. After a while, the doctor comes back to his normal human form, and finding himself in the sewers, he decides to continue working on the experiment right there. Peters learns that Connors is the lizard and tries to warn the police, but they tell him to get out of the police station. He then sets a camera in the sewers to prove his point to the police. The camera inscribed with his name is found by Connors, who learns Spider-Man's real identity. He attacks Peter at school and plans to unleash the drug all over Manhattan to mutate all humans into lizards using a cloud-generating device at Oscorp Tower, unaware that Gwen is there making an antidote for the condition at Peter's request. The police mobilize to stop both him and Spider-Man, but are delayed when the lizard infects officers with small doses of the chemical. Captain Stacy learns Spider-Man's real identity after removing his mask and allows him to go stop Connors while proceeding to the tower himself after Peter mentions that Gwen is there making the antidote. However, during the manhunt, Spider-Man was wounded by a police bullet and is having difficulty swinging from building to building to reach Oscorp Tower. The father of the young boy who was once saved by Spider-Man works in construction and hears about what's going on through the radio and TV while working an evening shift. He calls all of his construction worker friends who are also working, and they all maneuver large cranes into proper formation so that Spider-Man can use them to reach Oscorp Tower. After Captain Stacy retrieves the antidote from Gwen and arrives to save Spider-Man, who is being overpowered, both of them fight together to delay the lizard, while Spider-Man modifies the machine to dispense the antidote instead, restoring the humanity of Connors and the infected officers, and allowing him to save Peter from a fatal fall from the tower. It turns out that the lizard mortally wounded Captain Stacy by scratching him with its giant claws. Before he dies of his sliced wounds, Stacy makes Peter promise to keep Gwen safe by staying away from her. Peter initially does so, staying out of sight at Captain Stacy's funeral, which of course does not sit well with Gwen. She confronts him at his house, and he doesn't talk about it, but Gwen is no fool. She realizes his reasons. Days go by, and Peter finds it hard to spend his life without the love of his life. Arriving late to class back in school, Peter is told by a teacher to not make promises he can't keep. Peter leans forward and whispers to Gwen, "But those are the best kind." This is the implication that they are going to get back together, and in the last scene of the movie, we see Spider-Man ready to save the city. And with that, this movie comes to an end. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get new movie recaps.